Hi, welcome to Bjorn Does Movies. I'm Bjorn and I do movies. And today I am starting a new writing series. As you can see, I am in the Wild West. We're really there. The effect is extremely convincing, and that's because we're in the Wild West. I used a time machine, not a green screen. Don't believe anyone or anything that tells you that I used a green screen, because that's just patently false. So, as you may have guessed from the titles, I am writing a Deadlands TV series. Now, you might be asking yourself one of many questions. I would assume the first question is, what is Deadlands? I bet a lot of you watching this have never heard of this. Or if you have, it's like in a passing familiarity, like, oh, yeah, it's that, like, tabletop game. I've heard of that, kinda. Well, I'm here today to tell you about Deadlands, why it's awesome, and why I would think it could be the best movie franchise or TV franchise if it was ever adapted well. So, first questions first. What is Deadlands? Deadlands is a tabletop role-playing game, i.e. Dungeons and Dragons or Mutants and Masterminds. The gimmick of the game is that it is set in the Wild West, but not the West you knew. It's a version of the Wild West that's weird, different, not quite right. Some could even call it the Weird West, as I think the game was actually called at one point, but now it's called Deadlands, and that's what we're going to stick to. So, for this section, I'm going to briefly go over some of the lore of Deadlands, why I think it's so cool, and then I'll talk about the characters I plan to use in my script. For those watching right now, please remember to like and subscribe, leave a comment after this, tell me what you think. It really helps the channel, so if you guys wouldn't mind doing that, that would be awesome, and I would appreciate it a lot. Okay, so Deadlands is set in an alternate history version of the Civil War in the Wild West. It starts in this time period. Forgot to look it up, forgive me. Oh my god, oh good lord, a giant dog has invaded the West. How did he get all the way out to this couch in the middle of the Wild West? And there's some really cool historical lore. The basic conceit of Deadlands is the Wild West was the same until something called the Reckoning happened. And what was the Reckoning? You don't know, and you won't find out until you watch the script. But the Reckoning's effects were very clear. Evil was unleashed across the Wild West. Of all sorts, you've got monsters, wendigos, creatures, strange, bizarre animals, magic powers, demons, everything you can imagine in the Wild West. And to counterbalance that, sort of anti-demonic religious movements have popped up around the West as well. In addition to this, a giant earthquake has left California a ruin. Woo! Yeah, baby! California's a ruin. That's what it's all about. Joking aside, California is like a fractured ruin because of a giant earthquake, which basically ripped apart the land and made it this mess of mesas filled in with water, which they call the maze. And in the aftermath of the maze ripping apart California, two things happened. Number one, a city of survivors led by a man named Ezekiel Grimm, we'll come back to him, popped up and built a city called the City of Lost Angels. And this city is very, very relevant to my script, and about 3 of the 6 to 8 episodes I plan on writing are set there. The maze is home to all sorts of strange things. I won't go into any details on a lot of them, but I'll bring up some of my favorites, which include giant sea serpents called maze dragons. That's pretty awesome. There's some other things too. We'll get to visit the maze quite a bit in my script. One other thing happened as a consequence of this big earthquake and the destruction of California. Woo! Okay, last time I swear, I won't run that joke into the ground. Ghost rock appeared in the cracked ruins of the mesa of California. Now, ghost rock is like a magic kind of coal. And I don't know exactly what it is because it doesn't, the book, again, the details of this series are fairly sparse, doesn't exactly state what exactly it is. All we know is that it has unusual effects, including the ability to create unusual steampunkish machinery. Other more magical uses for it too have been discovered. And basically this stuff is as valuable as gold, and it started the second California gold rush equivalently. People are racing to get to this ghost rock, which is out in the middle of the desert. And Ezekiel Grimm, the leader of this city called the City of Los Angeles, has a big chokehold on it. Now let's go back to the Civil War, because unfortunately for the North, in the Deadlands universe, the South got their hands on the Ghost Rock first, and they used it to make all sorts of strange machinery and weapons which they used to destroy the North. The North is basically all but lost and has been pushed back up, but now they've started to get their own Ghost Rock weapons, and they are becoming a more formidable foe every day. And the Civil War will play a backdrop to the series. I'm not really going to focus on it because my series is going to be a heist story, a good old-fashioned Western heist story. So, let's go over some of these characters, shall we? And some of the lore of those characters' backgrounds. Our first character goes by the name of John Weber, and he's about as close to protagonist as you're going to get in this series. John Weber is what is called in the books a huckster, and what I'm calling a gambler, because a gambler just makes more sense with what it is. Now, what is a huckster slash gambler, you might be asking? Well, this is the thing that turned me on to Deadlands. This is the coolest idea for a magic class in a game I've ever seen. And its execution in a TV show is just as cool. A huckster is basically a man who has made a deal with the devil, so to say. But they do it specifically through games, i.e. playing cards. A huckster makes a deal with the devil and signs away his soul in exchange for gambling with it. So every time he draws a card, he could either lose his soul or he could get access to powerful demonic magic. So every time a huckster draws a card, there's a chance that they could lose it all. In my series, I'm going to tweak it up a bit. In the actual Deadlands lore, you play like a hand of poker against the demons, basically. That's really convoluted and hard to show in a TV show, unfortunately. So we're going to really simplify this, just for the simplicity of explaining it to a general audience. And the way we're going to do that is by making it a face game. If you draw an ace, you get really powerful magic. But if you draw a joker, you lose one of your three lives, basically. If you draw 3 jokers, you lose your soul and die almost immediately on the spot. Our protagonist learned how to draw these cards the same way everyone did, from a book, specifically that book. And it's basically a allegory for how to make contact and set up a contract with a demon through the guise of playing cards. We're not really going to go too much into it, but John gets his hands on this book in the opening scene of the show, and I'll just save the details of that for that scene. And we're going to follow him where he is now in the main event of my show, where he's fighting in Kansas. Now, for those who don't know, during Bleeding Kansas, when the hostilities between the North and the South temporarily came to an end, Kansas continued to fight like guerrilla style against each other, and it was pretty horrible. I'm not going to go too much into the historical details of that, but John is currently fighting that war because it's continued to go on. Because the North and the South have basically gone into this horrible war, and it went on longer than it did in real life. Kansas's like bleeding war has just gone on longer. So in the main event of my book, John is a sellsword, basically. He is a mercenary. I don't know if he's fighting for the North or the South. When I write the script, I'll flesh that out, but it doesn't really matter. He's a sellsword. He's not in it for any personal belief. In fact, he's gone there to sort of forget his woes. He's recently had a very big and very bad, messy breakup with another character in this series, and he's just trying to forget it. Unfortunately for John, he drew a wrong card, and now he's only down to 1 more joker. This is a really cool character. The idea of drawing cards to get magic is super neat, and I'll get more into the villains later to explain sort of where he fits in with this world. Our second character, Christine Moon. She's the daughter of 2 wealthy French nobles who have moved to the US, specifically California. You can see where this is going already. They've moved there, and they've lost almost all their fortune, but still had a lot of their wealth and material goods, and they used what they had to get a start in California, hoping to find gold, like everyone else did, so they could regain their lost fortune. And the Moons were, again, a very old French noble family. Unfortunately for them, it was not going to work out because the earthquake of '68 happened. California was ripped apart, and Christine Moon's mother and father died before her eyes. And in the darkness of the earthquake, she sees the truth. She sees the dark evil behind the events. She, like a lot of people who live in the in-between lands called the Deadlands, or the Weird West, depending on what you want to call it, knows that evil has been unleashed in the United States, and that bad things are on the horizon. But most specifically, Christine Moon has one very specific goal. She wants to regain access to her family's lost heirloom, a gem called the Heart of Darkness. And this gem has been in her family for generations, and her mother always said it had magic powers, that it could do all sorts of things. And when her mother died, it was lost. And Christine Moon has always wanted to find it, but she knows that it was lost somewhere in the maze, until she read a rather interesting news article, which will be the first scene with her. And that article says that a man by the name of Ezekiel Grimm, I mentioned him earlier, he's the leader of the Lost Angels, and he is currently living in the city of the Lost Angels in the maze, has been miraculously feeding his people. The people there have been getting food and all sorts of other things, and he's been performing miracles before their eyes. And she thinks that this can only be caused by one thing, the heart of darkness, which she believes he has. So the broad stroke story of my script is Christine Moon has gotten back in touch with her ex-lover, John Weber. They were childhood friends, you could say. After the deaths of both of their parents, respectively, they met up in a freak accident and sort of stuck together until Christine left John. Let's just say there's some bad blood there and some personal issues that really need to be worked out between them, which is great for juicy drama. She needs him because he has card powers that she can't get anywhere else. And he needs her because he's still in love with her and wants to make it work. So they're sort of an odd couple. Except they're not alone, because they're going to be joined by tertiary characters and villains. The first most obvious villain, again, is Ezekiel Grimm. There's a lot to this guy, but I'm going to not really bring any of it up. You can kind of find out about him as we go into the script. All you need to know is what I've said so far. He led a group of people, founded a city. He performs all sorts of miracles. Recently, he banished a bunch of demons away when they attacked the city. And by all accounts, he's a man of God. A very, 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 very radical man of God. And his followers are even more radical. The second main villains for this series are what are called guardian angels. These are Ezekiel Grimm's followers, his closest followers. And they go out into the West and kill devil worshippers, or anyone they find to be too sinful to be left alive. These guys act within no jurisdiction, and people are scared of them because, again, they perform miracles and seem to be able to do some sort of magic. Unlike the dark card magic, they seem to get their magic from God. And unfortunately, they've been turned on to our main characters and are hunting them. They aren't aware, however, that they're planning to rob Ezekiel of his stone. A lot of the series is going to be set in Tombstone and then the city of Lost Angels. Tombstone being a real city, by the way. You can look it up. There's a lot of really cool history about it. And there are going to be some tertiary characters we're going to mention there. There's a lot of real-life people, like Wyatt Earp in Deadlands. I'm not really going to touch them. There's a lot of baggage that comes with real-life characters and making sure you get their real history right and their actual personality. You can't really mold them to make them work in a story without like ruining the actual historical precedent behind them. So I'm going to try to stay away from them. Maybe we'll get a few cameos, and maybe I'll build them into the season 2 I'm planning to write for this if I ever get around to it. There's Lacey O'Malley, who of course is the writer of the newspaper I mentioned earlier. He's going to be relevant because our characters will be seeking some of the information published in that newspaper, and they'll wind up meeting up with him. Another character is William Ghost Eye Morrison. Again, these are all made-up characters that I've created. William Ghost Eye Morrison is a guide who takes people through the Deadlands that run between Tombstone and the Maze. A lot of unreputable folk run people back and forth there, much like running people over the border nowadays. If you don't pick the right sort, then you're liable to end up dead in the ditch and all your money taken. Luckily for our heroes, William Morrison is sort of the right sort. He has one eye and an eye patch, and is a rather unusual hard man. He spent more years in the desert than most. And unlike most, he knows just how real the supernatural threats of the Weird West are. He's seen a lot of stuff, and he has a lot of secrets. I really like this guy. He'll be sticking around for a few episodes, so you can look forward to him and some of his stuff. And that's really all I have to say about the characters. I don't want to go too far into it because I'll spoil stuff, and I'll have the first episode out pretty quickly. I'm basically done with the script, and once I'm done with it, I'll have the next video out because I just have to record it. So I can look forward to that pretty soon. This is a pretty big departure from my last video, which was the Suicide Squad. Deadlands is a lot more big and complicated, and it's unknown to a lot of people, so I have to do a lot of groundwork setting up the lore and explaining what's going on in it. But that being said, this series is spectacular. If you've never heard of Deadlands or anything, pick up a copy of the handbook, the game handbook, and give it a try. I know there's lots of people who probably be willing to run a campaign. If you want to run your own campaign, give this game a shot, because it is awesome. There's a lot of secrets in the world, and also a lot of spoilers. So if you want to watch my series knowing nothing about Deadlands and being surprised by every twist or reveal, then maybe don't read the Marshall section, the bit about, that spoils things. But beyond that, go into this world, because it is so cool, and it's way too underground for how neat it is. It breaks my heart to see how underrated this series is, because it's that good. So I'm going to be putting a lot of love and passion into this, and I hope to tell a story that's just as shocking and surprising as anything else I've done in this thing. My basic outline, I think this is better than my Suicide Squad series a lot. I think it's a lot better, and I think it's a lot more interesting. So you guys can look forward to that. It'll be up pretty quickly. Again, please remember to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. I'll get more into some of the characters that will appear later. I might do like a more upcoming characters at like the halfway point, because I didn't mention every character here, just the characters that are in the first couple of episodes. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to go have a drink at that there saloon over there. And thank you for watching. Okay. You're breaking the immersion, Asher. You can't be in the video because it breaks the immersion that I'm in the Wild West. Because there were no German Shepherds in the Wild West. That was in Germany. Alright? Golly. Alright, I'll see y'all in the next one.
Thank you.